Nightcap's back, and guess what we are talking about? President Biden. He came out swinging this week, attacking former President Donald J. Trump by name and describing him as a direct threat to our democracy. Meanwhile, the other Republicans, hoping to be the nominee, got together for a debate, if that's what you call it, which Donald Trump, again, decided to skip. And I want to start with that. Pablo, to you first.
Yeah, I love stuff like this. I love when debates go bad. It reminds me of watching. No, look, I come from sports, and sometimes the most entertaining games are the total messes.
Yeah.
And I love the idea that Chris Christie practiced in front of his mirror a line.
So much.
That he choreographed and delivered, and it was maybe the funniest unintentional thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Truly.
Oh, yeah. It was
Donald Duck.
It was like Bill de Blasio when he would practice his zinger and it would just be crickets in the room. It was beautiful. I loved it. I mean, it was like henchman con for Donald Trump. Vivek just keeps on getting better. He seems like Eddie Haskell after a night of doing blow with James Woods. And Ron DeSantis.
Many are saying that, actually.
Yes. Ron DeSantis is just, I mean.
He just disappeared, Ron DeSantis. I mean, I felt like he wasn't even there.
He wasn't even there. And he just looks like he just stole Pee Wee Herman's bike. You know, there's nothing going on anymore. I've never seen a fall like this.
What's interesting about DeSantis is they put him on a diet, I don't know what, but he got very thin, and now he's sort of not even there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know what to make of the debates because, not only is viewership down, which I really don't care about, but I mean, they're not that interesting to me. I mean,
none of them seem to be running against Donald Trump, who's the presumptive nominee. So that's actually my point.
But a lot of, conventional wisdom is they're running for a cabinet job, vice president, what have you.
The presidential loser industrial complex.
Exactly. Yeah. But I don't, it's funny. This is one of the least compelling things I've seen in my career as a journalist is to watch either one of these, Republican debates. We know that Trump's going to win the nomination. It's like hands down. I don't think there's any, barring. Again, it's not even in unforeseen circumstances. Barring foreseen circumstances, it still looks like he's going to be the presidential nominee for the Republican Party.
Part of the glory of this specific debate was that it felt so high stakes and low stakes at the same time. It was, yes, please.
Should Donald Trump, should any nominee be allowed to not participate in the debate?
Yeah,
Hold on a minute. If you're, let's say, one of the lesser known candidates, you don't have the budget for big paid ads. The TV networks are saying you're polling it diddly squat. I'm not putting you on. Shouldn't the American people, who in theory aren't hyper political, but shouldn't that be the night where they get to say, let me see all these candidates up there. Let me evaluate them. They're being asked basically the same questions. Let me hear from them. Donald Trump being allowed to skip, doesn't that give him this unfair advantage and the ability not to endorse whoever is the nominee, because all of them had to agree.
Life is unfair advantages.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, but it works for him. I mean, why should they make a rule change and say, you want the nomination? You got to show up and play ball. Listen, my son would love to go to Harvard. He's going to need to take the SATs and have good grades. He can't go there because he's got a dazzling personality.
But if you're a Harvard legacy who donates millions to the campus, he won't need to show up and take the SATs. And that's what Donald Trump has, that kind of privilege.
But I do think that ultimately what is the problem with this Republican Party is they're not interested in policy. So there's no policy talk.
Correct.
So you had these sort of interesting questions that were actually weirdly liberal. Child care? When was the last time you heard Republicans worrying about child care, right? Health care, the popularity of Obamacare. I mean, it was like a debate from a different party. And then no one could come up with any policy answers. And so I do think it's a good exercise for Republicans to be reminded that they have no particular policies except anti-democrat.
I mean, I also hate to put it in these terms. This is not 1960. This is not 1980. This is not 1992. This is not 2000, when the entire population might have been galvanized to sit in front of a television set and digest opposing views.
But why not give the population the opportunity to do that?
It's only showing up on one cable network that caters to a specific audience. So it's not that thing.
And again, it's the off year. There'll be much higher audiences for this year come 2024.
But it does feel like, because I get entirely, Stephanie, why you feel that way. And it just feels like if you actually are serious about making this serious, it needs to be serious.
Right.
Like
Yes,
part of
that's
the guilty pleasure aspect of this for me is like, I'll get lightly stoned and watch this. It's a reality show. It's absurd. It's absurdist. And by the way, that's how it's essentially presented if you just listen to what's being said, which is to say it's impossible to listen to what's being
And
said.
isn't that terrible for America?
Absolutely.
But the
No
entire
question.
thing is so Fox can sell advertising time. If all of these candidates, save for Christie, really believe Donald Trump would be good in the job, if they will all vote for him if he gets the nomination, then they drop out right now. They're auditioning for higher public speaking fees and media deals. That's it. We don't have to watch their audition.
I do a show.
I don't disagree with that.
I do a show at ESPN called Around the Horn. There's a mute button.
Kornheiser?
Tony Reale and the Kornheiser coaching tree. But the point is, there's better control of the panelists, of the co-hosts, because you can literally cut a microphone. I believe that if you're going to take this seriously, part of crowd control is actually saying to one of these candidates, you cannot talk right now, and taking it out of their hands. And until that exists, you're going to get a bunch of people basically cosplaying as their version of an alpha male, which is hilarious, but very disturbing.
Brian Williams hosted a debate on which I was a panelist in 2003 for the Democrats when it was General Wes Clark, days before we went on, was the 10th person to join the fray. We did have much more control at that point in time. We did ask much more pointed questions. It was not this kind of, free-for-all food fight that you get now. And we did elicit some answers from some of the candidates. And it was Jerry Seib, Gloria Borger, Brian Williams, and myself. And it was actually quite interesting and quite an arresting experience.
But
Much
the
different.
moderators
That's a good
had
point.
good questions.
Right.
It's that it was a pivot, right? As soon as they were asked about anything, right? I'm going to ask you about the auto worker strike. Yeah? I'm going to talk to you about not the picket line. I'm going to talk to you about the border line, and that was, and so that's the issue.
But that is that fundamental problem, which is they have no policy, right? They have like they have like 5 catchphrases, and that's it, right? We got to seal the border, build a wall. Even though Trump's wall was great. And it still exists, but we have to build it more. I mean, they have to simultaneously say they love Trump and also offer some kind of alternative to Trump, which is their love of Trump. I mean, it's nonsensical.
That's the bizarro part, and I was trying to say it before. They're not running against Joe Biden.
No, they're
not. They are running, in theory, to be the Republican nominee. And the only thing, right? Chris Christie is the one who's willing to punch the hardest. He mentioned none of Trump's 91 charges. He did not mention that the night before, a New York judge found him guilty of fraud.
Correct.
Instead, he just calls him a chubby duck.
He didn't mention that he was in the tank for Trump up until Trump's election and afterwards as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like you watch Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, Return to the Jedi, and at the end of Jedi, you realize Darth Vader's the bad guy? That late? Really? Molly's exactly right. The GOP has not put non-millionaires first, I would say, since Nixon and the Earned Income Tax Credit. If these guys had policies they wanted to do that would help non-millionaires, they'd never shut up about it. They don't, and so it's going to be 6 more months of Hunter Biden stories.
There was something else they didn't talk about, and very few Republicans have talked about it this week, and it has to do with our democracy and the fact that Donald Trump made a threat to one of the highest ranking officials in our military, saying Mark Milley should be executed. Yep. I didn't hear that mentioned on the debate stage and from almost all lawmakers.
He also threatened a private corporation using the power of government against a company.
But it didn't even lead the news that weekend. It wasn't even like we had breaking news alerts about, people being traded different baseball teams, and we didn't have a breaking news alert about the former president threatening.
Don't forget Taylor Swift, which dominated the headlines.
But this goes to the piece you wrote for Vanity Fair this week, and I want to ask all of you about this. How the media is covering this presidential election. What is your biggest issue with it right now? And what do we need to do in terms of self-reflection?
So I wrote about this, and there's a guy in New York Magazine wrote something really smart about it, too, which is there is an anxiety in the mainstream media that if you explain Donald Trump as he is, you will look like a partisan and you will look like you work for the DNC. But unfortunately, Donald Trump has 91 91 counts. And he has this criminal, and he had civil, and he also has threatened death to General Milley. And like, those things have to be reported. What I think is interesting is that it used to be like in 2015, he had $2 billion of free media, and every pitch the mainstream media swung it. Now they're swinging at many fewer, but you're missing these really scary autocratic things he's doing.
Listen, one of our own colleagues was criticized for a sit-down with Donald Trump. I have what I think is a fairly radical solution to this problem of dealing with Donald Trump or any candidate who refuses to answer questions. You tape the interview, and if the person stonewalls you, you do a cutaway where you actually stop. You then record a fact check, insert it into the body of the interview that you're doing, and then go back to the interview and do that throughout so that no one can steamroll you in any meaningful way. That at some point along the way,
It's pop-up video, Ron.
Honest to God,
VH1
to your history, you just throw them in and say, no, here are these 7 facts that were just materially misstated by the person I was speaking to. Now let's go back to the interview.
It does feel, though, like there's no beating Donald Trump's mastery of the bed of nails approach to scandal, which is to say, if you have a million of these things, I'll lie across it like they're pillows instead of one single one that can puncture me.
Superpower.
And that the shamelessness is the thing I laugh at darkly, admittedly, when I watch this debate.
But that's what he's doing. We have to ask what we're doing as the media continues to talk about Joe Biden's age and gosh, he looked old wearing sneakers. He's basically the same age as Donald Trump.
Correct.
If Joe Biden were running against Ron DeSantis and people wanted to make this about age, well, there's a conversation to be had.
Exactly.
But how is there continuous coverage about Joe Biden's age and not about the person who's most likely running against him?
Exactly. And I'll tell you something. Let's talk about the inches of plaque around Donald Trump's heart if we want to talk about age. I mean, the reality is I will take the old guy who needs another nap over the old guy who needs another defense attorney.
Also, Trump did. But also, Trump did confuse Jeb Bush with HW this week. He confused. He said Jeb got us into Iraq.
Which may explain also why he's not showing up to these debates, by the way, is that the speed, he was the best at it.
But and the only person there who could do it to him would be Chris Christie,
And
who
he
would be
knows
the
it.
bane of his existence.
Terrified.
Yeah.